Welcome back to this mini tutorial series for Rule the Waves 3. In the first episode, we sorted out our navy, orientated ourselves, decided what was necessary to do, and now we are in a slight calm phase in which we are going to rattle through the months, and we are going to design ourselves a new battleship in a short while. That short while is once these cruisers have finished construction, releasing up money so that we can dream the impossible dream and give ourselves the battleships that surely we deserve. In other developments, the Safax cruiser, which had been in the Southeast Asia, is on its way back to Europe, so that's good, addressing our European imbalance. Tensions with Italy and Germany are modest. They may get better. Relations with Russia are curiously good, and they may offer us an alliance at some period. Let's push on in the turns. Private shipbuilding contributing another 500 tons. This is typical of the early game, where private shipbuilding increases the size of the yards quite a lot. This slows down after the 1900s or so. Still some research efforts struggling, but that's fine. And then into September, and the Amiral Cecile has been commissioned, and so we'll go have a look at her in a moment. Scandal involving some important dignitaries from Britain has occurred at a party given on a world cruise by one of her ships. How do you handle it? Do you embarrass Britain and increase tensions with Britain? Do you hush it up and reduce tensions? Well, tensions with Britain are pretty low. They're only at 3, so we will embarrass Britain. The tensions will increase, and with increased tensions, you get increased revenue. So hooray for that. Obviously, with Britain, we probably don't want to do it too much, or it will be war. But actually, given the size of the Royal Navy, I'm not too fearful of war, except their battleships seem to be a lot better than ours. Here is the new Amiral Cecile. It has a status of WU, which is working up, and its crew quality is poor. It's going to take it the best part of 6 months to improve its crew quality. It does mean, however, that we now have 3 cruisers in Europe, and given that the Amiral Cecile is almost completely identical to the Safax in guns and armor and speed, it's wise to put them together into their own little division. So I'm going to create a new division. It's going to be for light cruisers, and we will add ships to it. You'll notice that it only allows ships that are of the same type to be put into the same division. I'm going to put these 3 because the forebear is in the South Pacific, so that's no use. Let's click OK, and we are going to address the role of these ships. So currently it just says independent. If I go to set role, I am going to set these to be the flagship, which is fine. And then I'm going to set these cruisers to be scouts. Now, we could do screen, which would mean they would proceed immediately ahead of the battleships and protect them from torpedo attack and things like that. Not really necessary at this stage of the game. You can set them to support, in which case they will trail slightly behind the battleships and usually on the disengaged side, ready to be handy for anything. Typically, this is launching torpedo attacks or defeating torpedo attacks from the enemy. You could make them the core so that they just go behind the battleships and just form part of the line. But I want them to be the scouts, and I want them to be the scouts for the 1st Battle Division. That will push them out a fair bit ahead of the battleships and well spaced out so that they can cover quite a wide area because, you know, the visual eyeball is the only sensor they have at this period. This is how you start to form your battle fleet to operate in the way that you would like. Let's just close that for now. You can see our monthly balance is now 1,000. In another month, that will increase again with the Admiral Sharma being commissioned as well, which is great. Various commissionings across other navies. And that gives us 2,000, which is not huge, but, you know, it's enough to play with. We've got 18,000 in our savings. Again, that's not huge, but you can only have these funds up to about half the size of your yearly budget. So, say 42,000. So we're about coming towards halfway towards our maximum. If you go over that half your yearly budget, what will happen is the government will go, well, we're giving you all this money and you're not spending it, so obviously you don't need it. Therefore, we're going to lower your budget, which would be a bad thing. So, time to address the big, hairy, complicated ship design dialog box. Here we go. Right. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to type and I'm going to say I want a pre-dreadnought, and I'm going to automatically design it just to get us going. Let's put the spotlight on and go through each of these various areas. So obviously here is an automatically generated representation of your ship. For people who love to tinker with these things, there is an entire graphics tab here with all sorts of controls about how you can adjust the appearance of your ship. I'm not going to go through that today. Here is the type of ship, the class, what it was developed from, if anything. We are not developing it from our current Marengo class. Its displacement, 11,600. The freeboard, the speed, and the engine. So freeboard allows you to have a low freeboard, which is all right. I was going to say fine. It's all right in enclosed seas like the Mediterranean. If you go with low freeboard, the ships will struggle in any kind of heavy weather. I'm going to keep it at normal. The speed is 18 knots, which is completely fine for this period. The engine priority is normal. I could have it at reliability, which will mean that it doesn't break down so often. It also makes it slightly heavier. I could go for speed, which makes it break down more often, but makes the engines lighter. But I'm going to stick with normal. And then there's a range. Now the range here is set to short range. I think for the French Navy with its global commitments, that's too restrictive. Short range ships cannot change sea zone during wartime, and that would be a bad thing. So I'm going to set that to medium. That will increase the weight of the ship, and we will probably have to increase the displacement soon. The propulsion is coal plus vertical triple expansion. None of these other engine types are available at the moment, so that's completely normal. And then we have the armor scheme. The type of scheme is a flat belt on the deck, which is normal for these big ships. And the belt is 12 inches, which is fine. However, the belt coverage is only narrow. Again, this is a weight-saving thing. I'm going to set that to normal, and that also is going to substantially increase the displacement. The extended belt, the protection of the bow and the stern, is currently at 0, as is the upper belt. The deck is 2 inches, which is fine for this era. The deck extended, again in the bow and the stern, is 0. The conning tower is set to 8. I personally only set it to 2 normally. The turrets are a bit thin at 10.5 on a 12-inch belt. Usually the turrets are at least the same and often a bit more than the belt is. And the turret top I'll push up to 3. The secondary guns are 4 inches, which is sort of all right. Would be nice if there's a bit more. Let's push it to 5. Torpedo defense, there is no torpedo defenses developed. The crew accommodation here is set to cramped. That means that if they are away from home waters, particularly in an area which doesn't have adequate basing, their crew quality will go down rapidly and they will have to return home. So I'm going to set that to normal. I'm not going to make this a colonial service ship. You can. There is a kind of negative modifier when you send battleships off into colonial service. They won't count their full displacement against the foreign station requirements. If you put colonial service in, that will correct it to a degree, but the ship's sufficiently large that that's not really something I want to spend extra tonnage on. Already we are well over budget, 1,500 through these extra things, particularly the range and the normal belt armor. So we're going to have to increase this displacement. These two inner spinny controls take you up 100 tons at a time, whereas these big ones take you up 500 tons at a time. Or down, indeed. Let's go the right way. Right, and whoops. Let's go to 14,200. So quite a big increase in displacement, which will obviously therefore cost more, both an absolute cost, this is now costing just under 46,000, and a monthly cost of 1,600. We now have the main guns. So we have 12 inches, which have been set to quality 2. I don't think we have quality 1. No, we don't, which is a shame. The quality 2 will give us immunity all the way. That's quite nice. So they have a range of just over 10,000 yards. They have penetrative power that goes up to 6.8 inches at 1,000. For this era, I think the 5,000 mark is an interesting one. Above 5,000, and you're really talking about long range for these ships, given the primitive state of their fire control. Under 5,000, you're talking about close range. So at 5,000, it can penetrate 5 inches. If we just have a little play, we could go up to 13-inch ships. And at 5,000, that just slightly increases it to nearly 6 inches. But the weight goes up. And if we bring it down to 10, that takes it down to 3.5 inches, so a great deal less. We haven't developed 11-inch guns, so our choice is really 10-inch, which is a bit small. 12, that's what the X here means, by the way, that it hasn't been developed. 12 or 13. Now, you'd think, well, 13 is bigger and stronger and better than 12. Surely, obviously, you're going to have 13. The heavy guns of this era have a very, very slow rate of fire. So if you go to the max, if you go to 13, yeah, if they hit, they will do a bit more damage than the 12-inch guns. And their range is actually slightly less. Their range is 9,700. So by going to 12-inch, the range pops over 10,000 for not much difference. I mean, it's a difference, but not much difference. In a way, what the main armament is a slight distraction. What you should be really interested in is what the secondary armament is. Now, these have only 85 rounds per gun, which is quite light. In later ships, I'd expect this to be at least 100, and ideally something like 120. However, because these guns have such a low rate of fire, I'm going to be okay with 85. Actually, I'm going to push it to 90. 90 is a more common thing. More interesting are these secondary guns, of which we have 8 6-inch guns, and it would be lovely to push that up to 10, if not 12. Now that does push the weight up, which means the displacement needs to increase, which means the cost increases. You can see how this goes. 12 seems a much more dangerous amount of guns, because these are the guns that really do the main piece of damage in this era. Then finally we have some 3-inch guns. I mean, they're a help, and pretty soon there will be small destroyers, 300, 400, after the turn of the century, 500-ton destroyers. So these guns will be useful in pushing away them. Ideally, I'd like them to be 4 inches, which gives them a considerably greater penetrative power, which increases the weight of these things. And then finally, over on the additional armament, we have a series of torpedo tubes. All the rest of the additional kinds of armaments aren't available to ships in this era, so you don't have to worry about flying stuff, catapults, missiles, radars, anti-submarine warfare, or mine warfare stuff. Only about torpedoes. So this has been given 4 torpedo tubes, 2 either side, both submerged. You do have the option, if I bring this down over here, to add one that's in the bow and one that's in the stern. Now, the bow torpedo is probably, in my view, completely ineffective, because you're moving forward and then you shoot the torpedo, presumably at something that you're chasing. So you're in a tail chase against something that's already moving at 18 knots. The torpedo speed isn't enormous. Their range is pretty short. So you have to be really close for these bow-mounted torpedo tubes to really be effective. The aft torpedo tube, for me, is a more viable choice. It's a bit of a Hail Mary weapon. In this case, you're being chased by presumably a superior force, and you need to try and get away. And having a torpedo tube in the stern, first of all, gives it some extra range, because you're firing into the enemy, so they're approaching you. So the 2 ranges are, and the speeds are multiplied together as they advance and the torpedo moves towards it. And secondly, it just threatens to keep them honest. Now, if you play in captain's mode, which I'll explain in a sec, this is a very viable choice. So what's captain's mode, you may say, Dickie? Well, you can play in 3 modes in this game. You can play in Admiral's mode, where effectively you just control your flagship and its division, and you give all the other squadrons orders like screen, scouts, support, and then they go off and do their thing. And boy, do they do their thing, particularly in this early game where control is really, really difficult. Admiral mode is challenging, and I don't recommend it for new starters. Rear Admiral mode is the default, and you can control your division, your flagship, plus any division that's within your command radius, which in this era is line of sight. Flags, or at night, searchlights flashing. And you can choose to have divisions within your line of sight under your control, or you can leave it under AI control and trust that it will do stuff. It'll do random stuff. It'll do strange things. And then finally, you have captain's mode, where you can control all the different forces, and you can also control some specific things, including when they fire torpedoes. In Admiral's mode and Rear Admiral's mode, you can simply say, go in for what they call a flotilla attack, go and launch torpedoes. In Captain's mode, you can do that manually. It's it's a little bit of a perfect play because you have far greater situational awareness and stuff like that. But on the other hand, some people get very, very annoyed when they feel that their ships are in an excellent torpedo firing position and no one's firing any bloody torpedoes, even though you've raised the flotilla attack. A little black flag appears on the map and it's like, just torpedo them. Worth thinking of playing with after a couple of plays and see how you feel about that. So I'm not going to have the aft. I'm going to keep that. It's given me 2 either side, and for me, the torpedoes on a battleship are primarily finishing off weapons and warding away, keeping away weapons so that people don't approach you too closely. I'm not absolutely sure whether doubling the amount of torpedoes is particularly helpful. If I wanted to lose some weight, I would delete these 2 mounts and just leave it with 2. And there we have it. We have 99 tons left, so we can perhaps lose 100 tons. That gives us 24 tons. For me, 24 tons remaining is a little bit light. If you give some weight remaining, that gives you some spare room for new equipment like better fire control when that becomes available. Otherwise, and it gives you a little bit of buoyancy for damage. So it's usually a good thing. So those are all the bits of your ship. The general characteristics, the protection scheme, the cost and weight remaining, your main armament, your secondary armament, your tertiary armament. Over here, your torpedoes, and later on, additional weapons. On this graphic, your ability, for those who are interested, to change how this looks. And that's kind of it. I usually press the tick here, which is a checker, just to make sure that everything is legit, and everything is legit, so that's all good. So I will press the save and finish, which will recheck that. Yep, everything's still legit, and tell me this is going to cost 3,500 and take 3 months. Had I done a development of the Marengo and just improved it a little bit, this would have cost a few hundred and taken 1 month. So once you've got a design that you are happy with, it's important to just go through incremental improvements and save yourself quite a lot of money, which can be used for other things. But I'm not fully happy with the Marengo, so I'm going to go with this one. And that's our first ship designed. So let's press on. A couple more dock size increases. So that's going to be 16.5. This is good, cheap, extra dockage, given that we haven't had to pay for anything. Right. Now, once you get a class of ships going, this may happen. One of our major shipyards is short on orders and is offering to build another Admiral Sharma in 20 months at a 10% discount. So you're getting a double discount here because it's going to take shorter than normals by several months, and it's going to be 10% cheaper. If you can, I always recommend that you take these offers because it's something for nothing. So I'm going to accept that, even though that's going to take our monthly balance down to the point where when we build our new battleship, we will be debt financing it a little bit. But that'll be a good thing to see how that's done anyhow. There we go. Porthal. Thanks very much. We've got 12 months left on the others, so that's fine. The Socialist Party is doing well in the opinion polls and might want to press for reduced armament expenditure after the upcoming elections. What do you do? So we can suppress all the socialist propaganda. We can meet and talk to leaders and be reasonable. This will lose us prestige, which I haven't discussed yet, so I will discuss, and do nothing and just say it's a political matter after all. Now, our unrest level is at 2, And I think if I suppress all the propaganda in the Navy, that might drive the unrest level up to 3, and I'd want it to go down to 0, really. I'm not thrilled that the unrest is already 2. So although that would be often something I would do, in this case, no. I could meet and improve relations, blah, 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 but I don't fancy losing the prestige. The prestige here is at 20. That's the default that you're given at the start of the game. If you lose prestige down to about 15, you will be kicked out. You'll be replaced as Grand Admiral and lose the game. So that's a bad thing. You will want to use prestige for various things in the future, such as removing completely incompetent officers or lowering tensions when you're not fully prepared for war. If we were at a point where I had, say, 26 prestige, then I might consider losing 1 here, but we don't. So I'm going to bite the bitter pill and do nothing is all politics and lose a little bit of budget. So currently we have 85,000. Right, there we go. Suggested social reforms attacked by Conservatives, proposals shelved. Still problems with that. And we've lost 5,000. That was a bit more than I'd hoped, and we still haven't lost tensions. So there go some of the best laid plans. You can think through it and go, well, this seems like a reasonable thing, but it still can all go a bit wrong for you. So that was a bit ouchy, but never mind. Let's go again. And the Admiral Cecile has finished working up, which is nice. And another month, and the Admiral Sharma has finished working up, which is also lovely. And here we are, ready to build our Charles Martel. And let's go to the build screen. And let's do that. Thank you very much. Boom. And that sends us 1,000 over, or 1,100 over. We've got 10 months till these come out, so we can just carry on building it and not run out of funds. So we should be fine. And then we will see if we will be able to afford a second Charles Martel. At the moment, tensions aren't very high, and we've just had them reduced, so I'm hoping that they will increase a bit. But for now, I'm pretty happy. We're in January 1891, so we've finished our first year. We've got a much better battleship under construction. We've sorted out our cruiser shortages because so many of them had to be committed to defense of the Empire. Finances are a little bit under attack, but okay. Tensions. It's hard to know who we're going to be fighting soon, but I expect in the next episode, if war doesn't break out, it should be a lot clearer who was likely to be our next enemy. So that's it for the moment. Thanks for watching. See you next time.